Hey everyone, welcome to the New Mainstream Podcast. Excited to have today's guest back, Michael Nevski, Director of Global Insights at Visa, one of the most respected voices in global insights and marketing strategy community. Michael works directly with Visa's Global Economic and Insights team, helping translate complex consumer data into actionable intelligence that shape how businesses understand spending, payments, and the evolving consumer economy. Michael, you were also recently recognized as an Insight 250 global list of most influential insights professionals. So really excited to have you. And you're a return guest. You joined us on the New Mainstream podcast last year to talk about AI and what it meant for marketing and insights. But as you know, in AI years, that conversation happened a lifetime ago. So we reconnected and excited to have you back to talk about things that evolve beyond generative AI, like agentic AI, which I think is the big push right now. Systems that don't just generate information, but actually take action on our behalf. And I thought it was fascinating when it comes to the payments industry, finances. What happens when AI agents start shopping for us, and what does that mean for payments, trust, financial security? So, Michael, welcome back to the New Mainstream, and excited to have you on to talk about all this.
Mario, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. But of course, I am participating in a personal capacity as a personal kind of engagement. I just want to make sure because my company requires me to say that. So, in my opinion, and my personal opinions today, which I will be expressing. So, but I'm really excited to be on the podcast and talk marketing research and the consumer mindset. So, the topic
Yeah,
or evergreen topics I'm always passionate about.
yeah, and I mean, I really enjoyed our last conversation. I honestly learned a lot about AI, and AI is so interesting, right? The last time we talked, I think we were talking about generative AI. Although last time you did mention agentic, interestingly, I think that was already happening um, in the B2B space, but I think it's grabbed hold of the consumer community. For people hearing that term, maybe let's start there. Like, can you help us define agentic AI, and is that related to generative AI and LLMs? Like, what's the difference there?
As many people already start using the generative AI, and we know some of those brands like ChatGPT, Perplexity, many others. So uh, it already can accomplish a lot for us. But so the next iteration of that, which is coming, would be the agentic e-commerce. And what is agentic AI? It's pretty much think of it as an autonomous bot which can act on our behalf to procure products and services at the best price possible, at the best location, best ingredients, best specs you as consumers specify. And that's where eventually we're going when you just gave an example about AI taking over the computer. Same idea. You would create an order as a human and bot and dispatch the bot, which will go and search the best possible deal for you and bring it back automatically. Say it's a staple, toilet paper. You're not gonna really pick that every time. Yes, you can set it and forget it button right now from Amazon, somebody else, but agent might be picking and choosing different suppliers every time you need to refill your staples order for your house, right? So, and that's where we're going. So that's why Agentic is very exciting because it's going to bring lots of changes in terms of how consumers shop, how brands position themselves and sell and market products and services, price optimization, but also it's going to affect, I believe, that's my personal opinion, affect the consumer insights industry, what we know, marketing research industry, what we know about consumers, how immediate we're going to get insights about consumers, and how we can create hyper personalization flawlessly with ease. So again, there are so many topics here we can uncover and explore, but that's what's exciting about agentic e-commerce. Once technology is there, once brands adapt to that, as well as consumers.
So, like talking about adoption, are we early in agentic, or like where are we, or is this already happening? Are there some early adopters that are already having agents shop on their behalf? Like, what are you seeing on your end?
Yeah, in my opinion, we're very early from the research I do and being in the industry and talking to many players. It's very early, definitely, because many consumers are not even aware of the term agentic e-commerce or agentic AI. That's number one. Number two, even those who heard about it or even have a high level of understanding, they still have some issues, not still, but of course it's primary issues of trust, issues of privacy, data safety. Those aspects are very, very important to consumers. Also, even those again who heard it but they don't understand how the technology is going to work, they need a lots of education. But also they want to understand how the system is going to work if transaction goes wrong, like we know like disputes or something like that. So those aspects requiring, excuse me, products and services is very important. And consumers have a very long chasm to cross before they adapt to that.
Yeah, but my opinion though, in terms of the adoption, like we go through this with every new piece of technology, right? Like, think back to the early days of the internet. Uh, I'm sure you remember, right? Like in early 2000s, it felt insane to put your credit card number online. Flash forward 10 years, not only do we put our credit card information online, I have it in my Google Wallet, on Amazon. It's saved everywhere. I have one click. Like that bridge was crossed very rapidly. I feel like Agentic's going to come quicker than we think. Do you agree with that, or?
I think, yeah, the rate of adoption is increasing. To your point, look at generative AI. Nowadays, it's almost
Yeah.
ubiquitous, right? But again, still, yes, it's still being led by younger generations, Gen Z and millennials. Boomers still lagging in terms of the adoption of generative AI, but the adoption rate is tremendous because it's been only what 2 years, so a little bit over 2 years since technology been really introduced, and see how it's spiraling and bots and agents, people building stuff on top of it, right? So generative or general intelligence. Now they're talking about developing more of a centralized general intelligence and stuff. Definitely in that respect I agree with you. The probably adoption rate is going to be much faster. However, in my opinion, it's still going to be, and it's still to be seen. The jury is still out in terms of the timing on how soon we're going to have this system in place because you have multiple players. You need retailers, merchants to sell the products using the agentic e-commerce. You need brands to support that, manufacturers. You need issuers, bank to enable the cards and technology. You need the networks to enable that, which already is happening. And you need, again, consumer education, but also another meaning of that, for example, which needs to be in place, the answer engine optimization, which is probably, in my opinion, gonna be replacing significantly, not fully probably, but significantly the search engine optimization because you're marketing to that bot, not to Mario or Michael who are actually browsing Amazon website. It's our bots gonna be doing that, and what it requires, there is no emotional aspect. There is an order, right, from the human, and it looks the spec. So that means bot needs to look at the products and services clearly listed, they're easily accessible to evaluate, easily indexed, right? So it's a totally different environment where it's not going to be eyeballs on those pixels. It's going to be the bot which is actually grabbing that information, quickly analyzing, and either concludes with the purchase or moves on to a different website, right? Because it can analyze multiple data points simultaneously. So you see, it's going to change the whole dynamic. So that's why it's going to take a little bit of time to have all of those stakeholders and participants come to the table, agreed on the rules of engagement, implement the technology, and start pretty much adopting that. But again, consumers still not there yet because it's actual releasing the power, releasing the control. because you're letting the bot acting on your behalf. And I was on YouGov podcast recently, and we talk about financial um, limitations. And what's interesting that they conducted a very brief survey, and turns out that consumers in the United States are willing to spend no more than $20 to $30 limit, allowing somebody else, like a technology, to spend on their behalf. Imagine that, $20 to $30. That's the hypothetical uh, limit right now by consumers, like where they feel comfortable. Okay, I guess, right? Okay, you can spend $20 on my behalf, but no more. Rest of them, I want to control. I want to have a panic button. I want to review that, or somebody else by human. So human involvement. Releasing of that control is going to take time.
You made some good points I hadn't thought about earlier. There's so many more moving pieces because like buying something online is pretty simple. You have the consumer, you go to a website or a retailer, and it's a one-to-one. This is you have the agentic, which could be, you know, a company completely unrelated from the retailer, that's completely unrelated from the financial aspect of it, completely unrelated from the consumer. So there's a lot more complexity there. And then that idea of control, I guess we haven't had a technology like this where you're releasing, it's making decisions on your behalf, right? I think generative feels like that a little bit, but it's not because we're still directing it. But I think generative is helping us be a little bit okay with AI making decisions on our behalf because we're
Hmm.
still somewhat in control of it. But again, I do think that that gap is going to be closed rapidly. That $20-$30 uh, threshold you mentioned, I think in 2 years is going to be $200-$300.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But it's 2 years. To your point, it's 2 years because look, we at what 80, 90% awareness of generative AI right now after 2 years, pretty much, and a
Yeah.
very high penetration. So that's why I agree with you. It's coming, but not within the next 3 months. I'm
No, no, no.
exaggerating, right? Because it's gonna take time for the technology being fully developed, for consumers start feeling comfortable, because right now it's kind of a high hope and high fear in terms of the consumer split, because consumers feel that yes, this is a great technology and it's coming, it's going to make my life easier, but same time that primal fear effect, when we don't know something, right, we pull back. Let me understand that, because I'm afraid of this. What if it's going to take the world, like a sci-fi movies and Terminator, right? So that's another aspect which consumers still think about it and fantasize, right? So
I mean, but also thinking about it, like in my head as you're talking, I was thinking about okay, what could make that 2 to 3 year gap quicker. I think you know this. I think we talked about it last time. The majority of the consumers right now, given the economic situation we're in, are price sensitive. Imagine, right, that the average consumer has a $300 monthly grocery budget, and Agentic AI comes and says, "Hey, we can save you $50 to $100 a month." I mean, I think you're going to take that risk to save that, right? Because that is potentially the promise there. But to me, this brings up a really interesting question about our industry, an existential one. What happens when we are no longer part of the purchase journey? Is research relevant anymore? What does research look like in an age 5 years from now where Agentic is making, I don't know, let's say 50% of our purchases? Are we still doing consumer journey research?
actually, very good point. And I still believe that we have a seat at the table as marketing research professionals, because we transition to be more of a consultants to the organization. And to address your question about the agents, that's where I'm excited because, yes, to your point, the touch points, the journeys, you will be able to get more immediate information about the bot's path and what they're looking at, and all that information with proactive consent or opt-in, right? Same time, once you get that information and there is a path, you still need to understand, in my opinion, for example, the very initial point when order is created. That's where it becomes even more vital, because once you dispatch the robot, pretty much, right? So robot is going to act based on the program it's been given. But who's creating that, in a sense, program? The human. Yes, if you look at the synthetic data versus the actual panel, sometimes they deviating because of the emotional aspect, because um, right now all those models are very rational. It's like a decision tree. What's the best next decision? So with us as humans, there is emotional, social, graphic, behavioral aspects. We sometimes irrational in our decisions, and that's where we need to do more research and double down on how brands going to influence consumers when they create those orders. At that initial point, I think it's not going to be at the point of purchase. It's going to be moved more the upper funnel, I guess. No, down the funnel, excuse me. Down the funnel, when at the beginning, at very beginning, to influence consumers. And that's where research will have even more vital role to understand the qual and consumer qual, not only because bots going to give you very good deterministic purchase spending data, right? And the history data. But what about the emotional, social graphic, style, social influencing? Because I might create the order because I've seen it worn by one of the celebrities, right? But that's where that influential point happens, right? So the lead generation point happens, and that's where we need to be. In another aspect, it doesn't matter how technology evolves, human oversight and make those stories really make sense to help marketing, product development, innovation. It's still going to be very, very important. That's why you would need still that professional marketing research consultant, I call it, oversight, to put it all together and say, does it make sense? Or there is something nuanced which technology is still not going to understand because I am human, I think like human, and I act like human, right? You see? So it's going to still take a while for technology to really be implemented as like this general artificial technology. I still feel it's going to be way far away from us. And also that humans, um, we're evolving as humans, right? So we still, yes, we're adapting new technology. We're in the 21st century. We're changing our styles. In that constant evolvement, I don't think it can be predicted by any model or technology because, like, for example, you can train the model on certain purchase behavior or even service and stuff, but can you account for black swan situation like a war in Gulf, Persian Gulf right now? And many people are affected, and some people acting this way, and some people acting that way. Can you predict for that? No, that's a pure human involvement here. If we would be evaluating current situation in terms of the research or something, we would count that in, unless we specific about this and as a prediction for the model to count that. So it would be just a human.
You're talking about, you know, changes in society and culture, which for sure AI is not going to be able to pick up on. But I'm back in the grocery thing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if I let an agentic AI, I'm going to have to tell it what are some factors that are important to me. So, I mentioned price. Okay, price. But if I didn't put any guardrails there, right, it's not going to pick up my brand preferences. Let's say I ran out of hot sauce and I needed hot sauce. I'm very loyal to hot sauce. I don't want any brand. If it came back to me with the cheapest hot sauce, I would be upset if it's not my brand. Yeah, in a way, to your point, it makes consumer research even more important because now you have less chances. Now, once the agentic is set up, that's it. So you gotta get into the consumer's mind on the front end and really understand so that when it sets up the agentic, that your brand is top of mind.
Yeah, and Mario, very good point, but you will add additional attributes or factors, like in your example. And by the way, yes, price sensitivity is there for sure, because if we ask this hypothetical question, can you, if technology will save you 10% on the next order, numbers right away double, right? From like 15 to 28% consumers saying, yes, sign me up. Definitely, I want to save money. But in cases like that, yes, the bot will be looking at your brand at the most optimal price from multiple retailers and get you, if you used to buy it from Walmart and all of a sudden there is a deal at Kroger, they'll go there and say, hey, I bought you less expensive, but this is your brand, this is the package size, right? So this is most optimal, and free shipping, for example, right? Those needs to be counted in, and that's the kind of a agent developers, I would say, because also there is another aspect, because consumer want the ecosystem be created, that those who provide the bots would be separate technology companies versus generative AI overall technology companies versus retailers. Although yes, there is a trust in retailers, but still they want, each player has its own defined role. Retailers sell products. Technology companies, high tech, fintech, actually provide the technology, right? Banks facilitate something else, right? In terms of the payments and stuff like that, cards, the enablers. So all of those needs to play a role. They don't want to have that kind of a single system provider, right?
Yeah, and so talking about the players, let's go back into yours. I mean, AI agents are going to start transacting on our behalf. The payment industry sits right in the center of that change. Like from your vantage point at Visa, what are the biggest implications for Visa or the financial industry in general when agents start making purchases on our behalf? Like, I think one thing is like, what does agent driven commerce mean for payments infrastructure? How does that change? Or does it
Right.
change?
Right. I'm not gonna speak on behalf of my company because I have no such authority, but I just want to express my own opinion, right? So in general, that agentic AI will be enabling all of the key players, from issuers to networks to merchants, right? So to create more efficiencies, because speed to transaction is going to increase. I truly believe that it's going to be even more doubling down in terms of the security and payments, convenience, and experience. And I think this is the next level of kind of a iteration with the utilizing technology, and it also helps with consumers to really utilize the digital aspect of payments, right? Regardless of how you, what payment type you're using, and going away from cash. Again, that's my opinion, because once you have the agentic e-commerce technology where you can rely on the agent as your personal assistant to do that stuff, why would you use cash and go personally somewhere? It's a winter time, snow is falling, and you just order something at the best price, best product possible, and it comes to your door quickly, efficiently, and you're happy, and your money is secure because it's not cash. You see lots of benefits coming, which probably, in my opinion, again, my private opinion, going to influence more consumers, especially in other parts of the world where maybe the digital payments are not as developed as some others. So more consumers going to adapt to the technology versus using cash. So the meaning of cash is going to be even reduced further than what we have right now.
Taking that further, I mean, this is just a theoretical question. Do you see a future where agentic AI has its own credit cards and its own wallets?
So that one is hard to predict for me. So again, because to do that, that means pretty much I'm just thinking out loud. The
Yeah,
high tech technology company which develops the bots, they would decide to go into the fintech, becoming a fintech company, issuing their own cards, right?
right.
Becoming an issuer, because it really involves a whole other challenges and areas, right, to become one, right? So that's why it's going to be more of a business personal decision to do so, right? Who knows? Because maybe yes, it's still going to be good to maybe have a co-brand card with somebody and providing the technology and maybe some loyalty programs versus issuing your own card like we have right now when banks issue cards and merchants have a co-brand with them, right? So that's the aspect I think is going to continue because it's been proven that it's a very efficient partnership, right? So, and I think with those technology companies, it might be the same unless they find additional value proposition for them and for consumers. So that's why the jury is still out. This one is very interesting question because nobody asked me that one. So,
So yeah, I like the philosophical aspect, I guess.
yeah,
And here's another question, right? I think a question people have been asking in philosophy for a long time, and now it's finally here. Is like, well, if there's autonomous cars and it gets in an accident, who's at fault?
yeah,
Is it the
yeah,
autonomous car company or the driver or the driver that it collided with? Right? I think Waymo is kind of battling with that. Talking about agentic AI and financial, let's say I program my bot, um, it goes out and makes a bad purchase. It buys something, rules fail, right? Maybe I set the limit for $200, but it goes out and spends $500. Who's responsible?
yeah.
And how does the payment infrastructure deal with that? Is that something you've thought about that are working on? Like, what are the guardrails there?
Yeah, and again, from my conversation and the industry research I'm doing, so what I see that majority of people actually saying that the company which provides the bot technology is the most responsible for the transaction if it goes wrong. Some consumers feel that it would be the technology companies who provide overall generative AI technology like OpenAI and those guys. But there is even like aspect, some consumers feel that they're also responsible for that small portion saying it's also on me because I need to create the right order for my agent to act on my behalf correctly. So there is this responsibility. And also consumers feel that industry overall, the ecosystem needs to be self-regulated, less of a government involvement, more that every player within this ecosystem needs to figure out their role and responsibilities and come to the table and agree on that. That's a very interesting aspect because again, consumers want separation of duties, I guess, right? So that you
Yeah.
have multiple players doing multiple things, right? And merchant role is primarily sell the products and services, not providing a technology. So that's how consumers feel right now. But again, we don't know what's going to happen 6 months or 1 year down the road. To your point, that opinion might change because we're dealing with a very innovative and a very nascent technology right now.
Yeah. And also, like, thinking about that risk, and I think you're right? Like the developer of the agentic bot
Hmm.
is going to probably hold the most liability in this supply chain of purchase. That's something that could probably delay the release and adoption of it because as a tech company, that's a lot of risk. If you're going to go out there and say, "Hey, we're going to make purchase on your behalf, and if it goes wrong, we'll take the blame." That's a big risk. The generative AI companies are dealing with that now. I mean, we just saw a big right. I mean, we just saw this whole OpenAI Anthropic battle happening and taking on risk of sensitive government information versus not. And there's
Hmm.
a loser and a winner there. I think we're going to see some things there too. What do you think will become normal in this conversation of agentic AI that feels futuristic today?
Ooh, that's a good one. One of the use cases people say that they want to have a smart home an agent would completely manage my house on my behalf. To me, although we have some elements of that right now with some of the technologies, but completely managing house and making the purchases to refill your refrigerator or stock or do some kind of a cleaning on your behalf if you have some kind of a Roomba running around, right? So turning on the lights. turn off the heater and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That one, it's almost like a sci-fi movie. And then yes, self-driving car, which comes to your home, right? It's your car, but you're pretty much not driving anymore, like we've seen in a sci-fi. I think that one, absolutely, in my opinion, attainable. But right now, it feels like futuristic. But soon we might see that something like that, right? So
No,
that would be
you're
very
right. I
interesting.
know, like, so I have I'm in the Google ecosystem at home. So I
Uh
have
huh.
Google, Google speakers, and all the old Google speakers, I mean, going back quite a way, have now been updated with Gemini. So now in the, and smart speakers, I feel like a lot of people have smart speakers nowadays. I don't know what the percentage of home is, but that's a step, right? That's a step in that direction. I mean, I'm sure I know it's learning my preferences. If I had smart switches, I have some smart light switches. It kind of knows what time I go home every day, what time I turn on the music for dinner. Like it's going to just start doing that more and more automatically, and what we won't even have to engage with the voice chat. It's just gonna know. Oh, it's the weekend. They put on the music at this time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. This way you don't do much to maintain the house, I guess, besides maybe getting your own bed ready or something like that, right? So because we
Yeah,
don't have a robots, yes, yet, but lots of stuff could be automated and it would be very low maintenance living. So even if you have a house in the backyard, that's kind of amazing. That would be awesome, right? So then people
yeah,
would want to say, I want more space because it's so easy to take care of it, right? Not only price, definitely like a land lot cost more, right? If you want a roomier kind of space, but same time, if you take that time or save that time for consumers to maintain this space where they live, it's a no-brainer, right? So yeah, for many
yeah.
of us.
Flip side of that question: what do you think people are overestimating?
In our industry, as you know, in marketing research, there is lots of talk that that's it. The generative AI, the agentic is going to replace our jobs, and that's the fear mongering, in my opinion, because people feel like that's it. We're going to be compressed and stressed because companies now realizing efficiencies, and they're going to get rid of marketing researchers. And you asked me that question, and I truly feel that it's a little bit over exaggerated because the human aspect of oversight and experience and understanding, but our role is transitioning. And it's not only becoming a very good prompt engineer, right? Write those prompts. It's also about as a research professional, you need to really understand the methodology is being used. Does it make sense? Do the three-step process in a sense, maybe qual, quant, I don't know, run a regression, then really do some other analysis in terms of the media consumption or media effectiveness, right, or content engagement and stuff like that. Those, again, the stories, the approach, consumers need to be there because generative AI can spit it out kind of quickly for you, some kind of action plan, but you still need to spend time with that very often, not very often, pretty much always, right? To double check to make sure it makes sense from a human point of view. And what it gives us gives opportunity to learn more, bigger picture, not just I'm a qual or quant, but also syndicated data, business insights, right? So overall industry aspects of the trends. So we need to become more generalists, but with the consulting skills to tell the strategic stories to help our businesses to navigate those challenges, current challenges, and also tie this all to the profitable behavior, to the bottom line, to support our businesses we work for, to be successful, and bring best memorable experiences for our customers and clients.
For sure. And when you're talking about researchers becoming more important, it reminds me of the pandemic. If you remember, we both worked in the industry during that time. In 2020, you know, I think everyone thought, especially tech companies, we're all going to be at home all the time. We're never going to go out and shop again. Peloton thought we're never going to the gym. We're never going to go to the movie theaters. We're going to just sit at home, order our food, work out at home, hang out with our friends and on VR and Oculus. And guess what happened once the world opened up? The exact opposite. Nobody wanted to be on their Peloton anymore. No one, people wanted to go out to farmers market and pick their food. Concerts, I mean, it's 2026. Artists are still breaking records in terms of concerts. They want to go back and connect with people. Um, these are things that AI could have never predicted. And you know,
Exactly.
we're going back to a totally different section, right? I mean, I think in-person experiences are so important now. And we're seeing younger generations, I think, rebel a little bit against technology, using their phones less. So yeah, I'm with you.
Everything comes in cycles, right? Comes and goes, ebbs and flows. Exactly that. Humans, we are social creatures, and everything is good in moderation. So with COVID, we stayed at home for too long. That's it. I can't do those four walls around me anymore. I want to see people. I want to see nature. I want experiences, right? That's why boost in travel. So, and it's always like that. We talk about millennials and how much they would spend on their devices and even Gen Z, but now Alpha is coming, right? So, and to your point, they're already rebelling a little bit against those technologies because they want to have that social aspect. Again, from generation to generation, everything comes and goes in cycles. So that's why it's hard to predict. Even if you train, each generation will have their own nuances. That's why we have a generational segmentation approach in marketing research, as you know.
Yeah, yeah. No, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you. We have a fun little last question that I like to do. Like, is there a book or a podcast or a movie that's kind of been influencing the way you think lately, like about the future of technology or consumer behavior, or something you're just reading that's interesting or fun?
That's a good question. Somebody just shared with me an article on Forbes.com. A fictional memo just moved real markets. Here's why it matters. And I just started reading it, and I highly, highly recommend for people to take a look because it talks about overall adoption, right? And how um, you know how it affects, to your point, consumers, right, from different sides. I didn't finish the article, but it's very fascinating approach in terms of the predictions and how consumers unpredictably change their behavior. What we discussed, sometimes too hard to predict because we think we can build algorithms and models, and it's not the case. That's what makes us human. Otherwise, it would be so predictable, right? So otherwise, they cannot predict our soul, like I call it. You can't real analyze and program Michael soul, Mario soul, right? So that's the core of who we are, right? So yeah,
Awesome, Michael. As always, such a fascinating conversation. Always good to have you on. Thank you so much for coming back to the New Mainstream Podcast. Thanks for everyone for listening. If people want to follow your work, I've been following you. You've been sharing a lot of great articles. What's the best way to connect with you online?
thank you, Mario. I'm very honored to be back again. And the best way to stay in touch with me via LinkedIn. You can always find me on LinkedIn, Michael Nevski. So, and I'm happy to connect, happy to have a conversation, happy to chat when I'm at the conferences or when I'm engaged with the industry. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Michael, and thanks, everybody.